Hello traders, welcome to the FX Entities channel where today I'll be doing another weekly forecast. If you're new to the channel, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and please don't forget to leave a like on this video. And so with that being said, let me dive into the VIX. So if you look at the VIX, we can see that previously fear began high, but it began to move down lower. So right now we can say that fear is cooling off, but I would still say that the political risk is still in place. So I could still wait to see the dollar continuing to strengthen. However, I would still be cautious of moves to the opposite direction due to the fact that volatility is still high. So there could still be moves to the upside or to the downside in terms of the dollar. So again, if we move on to the dollar index, we can see that currently prices are hitting a level of supply. So if we move down to the daily time frame, we can see that over here they have since been created a daily setup which could provide a move to the downside. So if we look at where current price action is, it could provide an opportunity to look for short trades on Monday. And down here there is still a valid demand zone. As long as there is risk of sentiment, it could offer an opportunity to look for buy trades. If it doesn't work, then probably the ones below here. That's again if we're in a risk of market condition. So with that being said, I will now move on to the currency pairs and starting off with the Euro USD. And if you look at the Euro USD, we can see that prices printed a dodgy candle as prices respected this daily supply zone here, which worked due to this risk of sentiment, and also again this weekly demand zone here. So they could have been a trade to the downside or to the upside. From my end, due to the fact that we're in a risk of market condition, I'm looking for dollar strength positions, and due to the overall market condition. However, this is not to say that I wouldn't be looking for potential long entries down here. All I'm looking for is a fundamental catalyst which would involve changing this political risk or monetary policy, if I might say, which would favor the euro or be against the dollar, if I could say. So if we move down to the daily time frame, we can see that that weekly doji candle formed as prices respected this weekly and daily demand zone here, which saw prices rallying all the way up until this daily supply zone. So there is a daily level of supply situated right here. So therefore, if prices do return once more, it could provide an opportunity to look for short trades. On the other side, there is a demand zone here which could provide an opportunity to look for trades to the upside. So as things stand, it's a matter of again assessing sentiment and looking to trade in accordance to what is likely to happen. What is likely to happen from my end is that this touch here could provide a further move to the downside, which would result in prices going deeper into this weekly zone of demand. So as things stand, that is yet to be seen, and I will be monitoring it in order to see if this risk of sentiment dies out. It could see the euro rallying, but I think that is unlikely due to this conflict. So with that being said, I will now move on to the Usdcad. And if you look at the Usdcad, we can see that prices have respected this weekly supply zone here, as prices in the previous week respected this demand zone here. So we're moving towards the 7th week where prices have not taken out either or of these supply or demand zones here on in terms of the weekly time frame. So again, like I've said in the previous forecast, it would be best to not trade the USD CAD due to the fact that we're finding good news for the dollar and good news for the CAD in terms of the inflation in respect to the Canadian dollar. So it doesn't make sense for myself to look for trades because the news are taking each other out in terms of the dollar as a safe haven and the inflation, which is causing the oil to rally. But in the previous week we saw oil coming down, and again from my end I will look for setups to the downside. If that does occur, then we are likely to see the dollar push above this weekly supply zone here, which could see the weekly zone being taken out. So if we move down to the daily time frame, we can see that this weekly supply zone, or rather this daily supply zone here, has since been taken out, and prices are now revisiting this level of daily demand. So right now again we can see that what is happening outside of a psychological zone. So it's either I could wait for prices to come in a bit deeper, or I could take an aggressive trade in this respect. So again, like I've said, in the weekly time frame, I'm not looking to trade. This is just what I think is likely to happen. Overall, I think the USDcad is quite choppy, if not kind of sideways. So again, it's best to look for trades elsewhere. So with that being said, I'll now move on to the pound dollar. And if we look at the pound dollar, we can see that multiple weekly zones have been taken out, and since then we can say that prices have moved deeper into a new level of demand situated around the $1.30 region. So again, due to this risk of sentiment, the dollar has been strengthening, and I believe that it is likely to continue to do so. So if we move down to the daily time frame, we can see that this daily demand zone here did not work, and since then prices have broken below it. So I would say that levels which I could take due to this risk of sentiment of supply have now moved here to the most recent one. So again, if this risk of sentiment dies out, then these zones from my end are no longer valid. I would believe that prices could bounce off here and take them out, moving towards a weekly zone, but there are psychological zones which could make it a much more structured move to the upside. So it could we see prices bouncing off from here, pulling up to the psychological zone here, come back here to make a double bottom, if I might say, before it breaks above here, pull back and move towards the supply zone. But again, there are other developments which could happen in between that move, which could see the dollar move back down aggressively. So due to this risk of sentiment, I believe the dollar is likely to still see strength in these coming days and weeks or so, but I would still be careful due to what is happening in terms of the technicals on the dollar index, which is involving the dollar hitting a previous monthly and weekly zone of supply, if I might say. So with that being said, I will be looking for short trades over here on the pound dollar, and as things stand, it's a waiting game. So I will now move on to the indices. And looking at the NASDAQ, we can see that in the previous week prices came back down due to this risk of sentiment, and right now we are situated in the 13,000 psychological price region. So we have since seen a bounce on the weekly time frame, and if we move down to the daily time frame, you can see that prices on Monday came down here, and on Wednesday rallied back up to the psychological zone before again bouncing in it. So we could see that prices are now playing around these two psychological zones. So again, from my end, there's nothing much I could do or I'm looking to do, due to the fact that we are currently experiencing this risk off sentiment, so I would not look for trades to either sides. Although they are setups, I would not be looking to take advantage of any in that regard. So with that being said, I'll move on to the US30. And if you look at the US30, we can see that previously prices kind of formed a dodgy candle and it closed off down. So right now we can see that prices did move to the upside and to the downside as well before closing at this level of the 33,000 price region. So if we move down to the daily time frame, we can see that prices have since not made any quite aggressive move in my understanding of how prices are moving. So again, I wouldn't want to trade the indices. There isn't any clear setup, but for trades to the downside, I would want prices to first reach here to look for potential confirmation for prices to go down. That's if we're in a risk of sentiment. If we turn back to a risk on market condition, I would believe that prices could bounce off from this zone here and begin to take out these levels of daily and weekly supply. So with that yet to happen, it is a waiting game to see if whether a catalyst will occur which could change the whole outlook of the market. So with that being said, I'll now move on to oil. If you look at oil, we can see that prices took out multiple levels of supply, and since then prices have created a dodgy candle. So as things stand, I would like to assume that there's an opportunity to look for short trades. As I previously said, when prices were down here, if we do see a printing of a bearish candle, it could provide an opportunity to look for sell trades. However, this goes against what is happening in terms of inflation, or the inflation incurred on the energy sector due to what is happening in Europe. So with that being said, this is rather a breakaway from my trading strategy, which could yield a good return or a loss. But again, it's not going to be really huge. It's just going to be a controlled as all the other trades which I take. So again, if we look at the daily time frame, we can see that there's an engulfing structure here, which I myself will be looking for in order to look for short trades. So if prices were to return up here, I would look for short trades. So on terms of the daily time frame, there isn't any demand zone which I could look to take until all the way down here. So this will be what I'll be looking for. Any pullback up here would provide me the opportunity to short the oil. But if that doesn't happen and I don't find any signal or indication that prices are likely to move down, then I will disregard this move. So with that being said, there could be potential areas to buy here, but I don't really see this as demand or this as demand as well. So I would only look for prices to come back all the way down here in order to look for trades to the upside. But as things stand, that is far from happening. So with that being said, I'll now move on to Bitcoin. And lastly, if we have a look at Bitcoin, I did say that it will go higher this month, but we have since seen that there's been rather two types of indecision candles in the first 2 weeks of the month. So I could say that we are likely to see further pushes to the upside, but they could still be around this psychological zone. So there still is room for a move to the downside. And again, this is trading, and sometimes we don't get trades to go our way However, it's a matter of understanding the goal, which is long-term trading. So right now, in terms of price action, there hasn't been any significant move. So if we move down to the daily time frame, we saw that previously prices did respect this demand zone here. We saw a push, however prices came back down to it. So right now, again, there is an opportunity to look for long trades here. If that doesn't work, then preferably this demand zone below it could work. If neither of these work, then it's a matter of looking for trades down here. However, from my end, I haven't been really looking for entries on Bitcoin due to the fact that although the data is in support of a rally, is not in the area which I would say that I would be looking to buy. So right now, this could still be a pullback of a major move down to the downside. So this could be temporary, or I could be wrong, and it could be a start of a move to the upside. So until I see the type of data I'm looking for in order to look for an entry, it will be then where I enter in long. Right now, it's still suggesting that it would be best to sit out in these moves to the upside and instead look for a different data setup which would tell me that it is best to buy off these demand zones. So with that being said, this brings me to the end of my forecast, and I hope that you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and also like this video if you haven't done so. So with that being said, FX Entities signing out.